Medication Administration Training Program. Giving medication safely.
Now let's talk about how you can give medication safely. It's helpful to think of giving medication in 3 parts: preparing to give it, giving it, and finally, documenting the dose. The steps to follow for each of these 3 parts are shown on the Giving Medication Safely handout. The preparing to give medication steps are on the first page of this handout. For the giving medication steps, the handout tells you to go to the correct procedure guide since these steps are different for each route. Lastly, the documenting the dose steps are on the second page of the handout. Now, let's look at each of these sections one at a time.
Preparing to give the medication.
First, let's review the steps to prepare to give medication. Check the child's log of medications and consent form to make sure it is okay to give this dose. Make sure someone else hasn't already given it. And if it's an as-needed medication, check that this dose would not be too soon after the last dose. Then, gather the supplies you need, such as dosing spoon or cup. Now it's time to get the child. Be sure to verify that you have the right child. Bring the child to the area where you'll give the medication. Wash your hands and the child's hands. This is a very important point. After getting the child settled in the medication administration area with another provider near enough to keep an eye on the child, take the consent form with you and get the medication from the storage area. Getting the medication out of storage after you have everything set up means the medication will not be left unattended, even for a minute. This is so important because children can grab unattended medication in an instant. You're probably used to preparing everything you need for an activity before getting the children. However, when giving medication, you need to get the child before getting the medication. Now, do the first match of the 5 rights. This is another very important step. When you get the medication, match the 5 rights while you're at the medication storage area. This assures you have the correct medication. It's very easy to grab the wrong container. Check the expiration date on the medication to make sure it has not expired. Bring the medication to the administration area.
Giving the medication.
Now, let's move on to giving the medication. To give the medication, you'll follow the steps in the procedure guide for the route you will be using, such as oral, inhaler, or epinephrine auto-injector. Check the consent form, medication container, and procedure guide for instructions on how to prepare the dose. Do anything these instructions tell you to do. This could include tasks like measuring a liquid dose, getting 2 tablets from a container, getting a small amount of food to give with the dose, warming eardrops, or shaking the medication. In this case, this is a liquid medication which is labeled shake before administering. So to prepare the medication, shake it and then measure out the correct dose. Just before giving the medication, do the second match of the 5 rights. This is your last chance to catch an error before giving the medication. Match each of the 5 rights on the child's consent form and the medication label and with the dose you're about to give. While matching the 5 rights just before giving the medication, recheck the accuracy of the dose you're about to give, especially if it's an oral medication that you have measured out. You can also have another MAT certified provider confirm the accuracy of the dose. For medications given by eye or by ear, be sure you're about to give the medication in the correct eye or ear. Give the medication following the instructions in the procedure guide. We'll review the specific steps for giving medication by each route later in this course.
Documenting the dose.
Now it's time to document the dose. Start by doing the third and final match of the 5 rights. This is your last chance to recognize the medication error while there's a good opportunity to take corrective action. Next, document the dose in the child's log of medication. This is very important. Document the dose before returning the child to the group and before returning the medication to the storage area. This way, all the details will be fresh in your mind, so your records will be as accurate as possible, and so the medication will not be left unattended. Here's how to document a dose. Always document the dose in ink. Write down the actual date and time when you gave the medication. If you gave the dose earlier or later than scheduled, don't write the scheduled time, write the actual time you gave the dose, and be sure to include AM or PM in the time. Write down the actual dose you gave and the actual route by which you gave it. For instance, if you gave eye drops in the left eye, be sure to write left eye as the route. To avoid confusion, it's best to use the same wording for the route as written on the consent form. So if the consent form states oral, and this is the route by which you gave it, write oral rather than by mouth for the route on the log of medication. If this is an as-needed medication, write down the specific symptoms you observed that prompted you to give the medicine and the time you notified the parent of this dose. If you notify the parents later in the day, you can add the time notified then. Sign the entry and print your name. If you were scheduled to give a dose but could not give it, such as if the child refused, document the time of the missed dose and the reason you didn't give it. Now, return the medication to the storage area. Returning the medication first means the medication is never left unattended. After the medication is back in storage, wash your hands and the child's hands. Then return the child to her group. Check on the child at the time when side effects would likely appear for that route in medication. Document any side effects you see on the log of medication. As we've discussed before, you'll need to take additional actions for serious or adverse side effects. Notify the parent of all side effects and document the time you notified them. If you make a mistake when documenting a dose, cross out the incorrect information, write the correct information, and your initials. What about field trips? When children are on a field trip, they may need medication. Use the same safe medication process we've just discussed to give medications while away from the center. But think ahead. You'll need to be sure to pack the medications, supplies, consent forms and logs you will need, and you'll need a way to keep the medication out of reach of children and at the correct temperature. A backpack with an insulated container in it can solve these problems. What if you make an error when giving medication? The medication errors handout includes a comprehensive list, but in general, a medication error occurs when you make a mistake in the 5 rights, such as giving the wrong medicine, giving it at the wrong time, giving the wrong dose, giving it by the wrong route, and giving it to the wrong child, give expired medication, or give medication without the proper written permissions. As soon as you discover you've made an error, it is crucial to contact the parent so they can contact the physician if necessary and let you know what to do next. The most important thing is to protect the child. To prevent errors in the future, it's also important to record each error on a medication error report form. Your team should review these forms periodically to assess for patterns and to look for ways to prevent these errors going forward.